Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Spin Market Report on the Spin Market Podcast Network, where real stories meet real impact. Our podcast network has thousands of local and regional listeners tuning in each week. That means businesses are getting heard and communities are staying connected. Did you want to get your brand in front of a highly engaged audience? Contact Spin Market today at www.spinmarket.com for more information. Now let's get into the episode.
It's the Spin Market Report. Here's your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, we are back. It's the Spin Market Report, Marketing Monday.
Marketing Monday, that's right. You got it.
Comes out every Monday, and this is probably the best part of your Monday. Let's admit it. So
you can't live a Monday without listening to the Spin Market Report.
You know what's going to make it even better? Jefferson Fosbender is with us today. Jefferson, you are the Economic Development Director for the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance. In your own words, for people that are unfamiliar with it, what exactly is that job?
Yeah, well, how much time do we have? So the economic development, just world in general, covers so many different facets. Some days you're working on infrastructure plans, whether it's helping the city and the county kind of facilitate, roads and water, wastewater, those types of conversations. Then maybe another day you're working with the small business owner and talking about ways that they can improve their digital presence, something that y'all might know about.
Yes, just a little bit.
Yeah. And then, then another day you're talking to the folks down in Des Moines at the Iowa Economic Development Authority about, what we might be able to do to bring a new industrial prospect to the region. And so it's very, very widespread.
Yeah.
Every day is a little different.
Oh, it sounds like it. So you are one part of the many cogs in the wheel that is the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance. Can you explain maybe to people listening that don't know what that is? Can you explain kind of generally what that is?
Yeah, the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance, it's really as the economic development arm and the Chamber of Commerce sort of combined. We're member driven. We are here to serve members and really serve the community through the strategies and sort of the initiatives that the members kind of guide us or task us with. I would say as far as a mission, in general, the mission is to help enhance the quality of life for our region. And from a very technical aspect, and kind of where my job is specifically geared towards, is when you can recruit, whether it's new businesses, new industries to town, when you can help facilitate new housing development or, help recruit new families to town, that all in some way, shape, or form increases the tax base for the community. Those tax dollars then go back into helping our schools, helping our roads, recreation opportunities, public safety opportunities. And so when you think about like economic development, it's about, enhancing the quality of life in the region, but we do that through kind of a multifaceted recruitment effort to help boost that tax base.
Absolutely. I mean, when you mentioned fixing the roads, that's something that people are like, oh, why are they always fixing the roads? But that means you have money to fix the roads, which is a good thing.
Right. We should want to, when you live in a community, when you buy things locally in a community, when you, get gas at the gas station, all of those things, you're supporting in a very real public way the improvement of the infrastructure and like I said, recreation opportunities and everything. So it all kind of works together.
But to add to that, keeping business in town is part of that as well. As bringing new businesses, just as important to keep the businesses that you have here. So there are a lot of times you're working with them on a variety of things as well. Yeah,
business recruitment and retention is kind of the name of the game. So yeah, our it really is multifaceted. I think every business kind of requires a little bit of a different approach or maybe a little bit of a different, sometimes they need just kind of a little bit of a push to say, hey, you're right there. You just maybe try this little thing instead, or maybe try looking at this a little different. Some folks might need a little bit more of a substantial need, and we just are trying to be there to reach out and see how we can address those.
So how did you get involved in something like this? This isn't something where you're just kind of like scrolling through TikTok at night, daydreaming. You're like, I kind of want to be an economic development director. It sounds like right up my alley. Like what got you into this job, or how did you get involved?
Yeah, with all of the TikToks of like people's brunches and, stand-up comedy, and I landed upon economic development.
Yeah.
But no, it's, I went to college for econ. I didn't even know economic development existed as a career. I had never even heard of it. Actually, kind of a crazy story. I reached out to the Growth Alliance when I was a junior in college to see if they had any internships here locally, because I was a business major. I was like, you know what? I'm interested in kind of being in town for the summer before my senior year. It was just going to be an opportunity to get some experience. They did not have any, openings at the Growth Alliance, but they basically distributed my resume to the 9-county region called the Mid-Iowa Growth Partnership. You might have heard, the 8 or 9 county region that we're a part of. And Ackley, Iowa, over in Hardin County, reached back out. Again, as a junior in college, I would have been about 20. Ackley, Iowa was looking for kind of economic development / like city administration work. And I joined the city hall there. I worked there for about 3.5 years, doing economic development and kind of city admin work. And I just loved it. It was kind of the perfect crossroads between my analytical, econ training and a lot of the management and organizational leadership. So, facilitating committees and, really kind of strategic planning, building initiatives, and kind of really aligning folks to all be pursuing the same goal. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I jumped at the opportunity to join back up when I moved back to Fort Dodge. I saw the opening, and it all worked out.
That's awesome. So what does a typical day look like for you? Like, let's say you go into the office, like what is a day-to-day activities? Are you like crunching numbers, looking at spreadsheets, calling people? Like how does this all work?
Yeah, it's, kind of like I sort of alluded to up front. You could be in the morning talking to a committee of local folks and community leaders about, maybe a workforce development need, and then transition into having a meeting with an entrepreneur who's looking for maybe a building in town. They've got a business idea. They're looking maybe for some real estate or some help there. Then you might be on the phone with some folks down at IEDA to talk about, hey, there's this industrial prospect looking for a site in Iowa. What sort of needs do they need? Does our site match that? And really everything in between. Today I was at the Webster County Supervisors meeting talking about some project-specific information there, working with the county auditor on some projects. So it really is just so wide-ranging.
Okay, so like how do you define this economic development? Is it when a building goes up or when somebody moves to town, or is it before that? Can you see the effects before that?
That's a great question. I think sometimes at the community level, it can be a source of frustration because if you're looking at it in the short term, sometimes it looks like nothing's going on. Man, there's been nothing new or nothing exciting happening.
You just keep saying that there is, but I'm not seeing it, and that's hard for them to grasp.
Yeah, they took the mall down. It's been 4 days. How come there's not 80 buildings there? I totally get where you're coming from.
Well, yeah, and so I kind of define economic development as really preparedness and being as ready as possible for when the opportunities do come. So, a lot of my job, we talk a lot about the industrial park out by where Cargill and CJ Bio and Valero is. One of my favorite episodes, by the way, was your conversation with Luke Palmer out at CJ.
That was really good.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so we've got this economic development opportunity here where there's existing industry, but there's also available land, there's rail access, there's highway access, ample amounts of water and wastewater capacity, electricity, natural gas. So it all kind of centers to this site. And so a lot of my time is spent seeing how can we maximize this area specifically. And this is just one example. There's plenty of other resources and available sites in the county. But just as an example, if we can continue to make ourselves as ready as possible for that next company, whether that's, again, inventorying how much utility capacity we have, whether it's doing our due diligence on site plans, so, doing some environmental surveys or anything that we can do that eventual company doesn't have to do themselves is another leg up that puts us closer to the top of the list so that, other companies don't get chosen before us.
That makes a lot of sense, because if a company's looking to move somewhere, they want to do 10 soil samples and 10 different, you could be like, we already did it. We already did all this stuff in this area where it would fit for you for X, Y, and Z. That's actually
right.
Well,
thinking ahead. That's great.
That's the shovel-ready site certification end of it, is what he's describing right there.
Right. So we're, I guess, there's nothing confidential about this. We're pursuing IEDA site certification, where basically, it's like a 50 component, very, very in-depth due diligence plan where you basically have to check all these boxes to make sure you're doing everything possible to make sure your site has almost no risk to a company moving to the region. So again, we're making sure utilities are available, making sure the ground is accessible. I've learned way more about like soil borings than I ever thought I ever needed to know just in the past couple months. But it goes back to, if that company can say, oh, you did the homework for us, it just makes us that much more likely to get that next industry.
This is crazy, because you're bringing up stuff that I wouldn't have ever thought of, like, is it accessible to get electricity out to where you're going to build this thing? Because imagine they're going outside of town, the crossroads of global innovation, somewhere out there. They have a rail yard right there. So it's like you can connect to the railway. So there's a lot of things you guys have to think ahead about that I would have never once considered for this. Like, I didn't realize it was this in depth, and you have to plan this far ahead to kind of think about this stuff. Let's kind of shift this into gear for something else, because Can you like walk us through very generally what the process is like for bringing a company in? Like, the one I want to say is Chick-fil-A. It's just the one everyone notices. It's right there. It's always popular. Everyone's there. But what was the kind of the general gist? Did you have to go through? And I'm assuming it's like, this is how much traffic we have, and this is how much area we have, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of that kind of pre-planning you had to do there too.
So yeah, first I'll say all of the Corridor Plaza development is entirely led by the City of Fort Dodge development team. Mm-hmm. So, we at the Growth Alliance weren't, specifically on the lead for getting those retail developments. Certainly we're part of the conversation, and we're there to support as our city partners, are getting those things done. I will say, taking Chick-fil-A specifically, because I'm more on the industrial side, but on the retail side. So as an example, these big national conglomerates, sometimes international franchisees, they have teams upon teams of folks who are doing, again, similar to what y'all are doing, market research, geofencing, where is traffic coming in, where is it coming out, and they're identifying ideal locations for their franchises, and then once they've identified, then again, it's up to the communities, which I give the City of Fort Dodge and Webster County a ton of credit. They've now prepared their site. Whether it's on the zoning side, building streets, building water mains, whatever it is, they've created a site that's literally shovel ready for these companies. And then they do all the negotiations there. So that's how it kind of works on the retail side. They've already chosen you before you even even knew that they were interested in you. Right. So without naming any company names, if you're in the community and you're like, why does Fort Dodge need a, XYZ? We already have this many XYZs. Those companies are choosing us.
Yes.
They've seen the opportunity because they see the people, they see the traffic, the amount of commerce, and they know that locating in Fort Dodge or Webster County is going to be advantageous to them.
Wow. So even on like a city level, they're going out and planning ahead and doing this stuff, like you said, like rezoning things. Like, how big of a pain in the butt would it be if a company wanted to move in? They're like, we would love this spot, but we'd have to rezone it, and that takes paperwork and time and effort from a lot of different people in order to get it done. So kudos to you guys for doing that. That's really kind of cool. So how do you help support the businesses that are already here? We kind of talked about it a little bit. Can you kind of just generally speak about that as well?
Yeah. So now that's kind of a combination of like what the Growth Alliance does versus like, I guess, economic development in general. From the Growth Alliance standpoint and from the member base, we have a huge suite of opportunities and resources that we offer to our members to support those existing businesses. Everything from kind of our networking and educational sessions where folks can gather, whether it's our meet and eats or leading ladies events or whatever it might be, where you can come to the table, meet some folks, maybe kind of share ideas, best practices, all the way to, we have workforce development opportunities. So we're helping try to meet folks where they're at to help them in their recruitment and retention efforts for employees. We have, certainly just a network of, if you have a question just about, again, whether it's marketing, whether it's, where do I go for this resource or that resource? We want to be sort of that connector. And then lastly, recently, since I joined the Growth Alliance, we started what's called the Small Business Task Force. And it started as a task force. Its specific goal was to kind of start investigating, this idea of succession planning. And when we started it, we were noticing a lot of these businesses that they either had retiring or, founders that were just looking to maybe move on or do something different. And we were like, do we need to check into this? It seems like a lot of businesses are fitting into this category. So that's where it started, and it's turned into now kind of a quarterly educational session where, we invite entrepreneurs in just to try to create some learning opportunities, some best practices, some networking, those types of things.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I was something else until we sat down here and we talked with Molly Veron-Kuhn about succession planning. It's like, I didn't realize this was something you could do on like a city level as well. Cause if you have one plumber in town and the plumber's going to retire, what are you going to do for plumbing? Like I never thought about that industry by industry by industry, and that's actually something that until I started doing this, I didn't really ever think too much about.
Well, and Teresa Hildreth from Calhoun County.
Oh yeah, she was talking about it too.
Here. She was discussing that. And what's interesting is some of the things as an economic development director that she's doing are just a little bit different than yours because of the county and the needs there versus you being in more of a city and regional because it does cover the outside of that area. But some of the duties are very similar, but yet she had some different
thought processes
as well as goals ahead of her that she was discussing with us that are just a little bit different than what yours are. So again, you can't pigeonhole what an economic development director is.
Yeah, it's not like it's just these 5 things and just check the boxes and you're done. It's different for every area.
Yeah, it's really about, your needs are going to be informed by the region and the strategies that you set forward. We, with a town of about 23,000, our needs are going to be a little different than maybe a more rural part of the region. And so yeah, how do we make sure our resources are being put towards, goals that are going to impact the most amount of people? And yeah, it does look different. I started my economic development career in Ackley, Iowa. It's a town of about 1,200 people at the time. And the needs of that community were wildly different than the needs of our county. And so it's just kind of, again, setting forth that strategy, making sure the goals are well defined and well communicated so that the community has ownership of it. And then, putting the things in place so you can accomplish those goals.
That's awesome, because this segues perfectly into my next question. How important is community feedback on these things? You had talked about you have different, I want to say like meetings with the community, but there's different events you guys host or are involved in some capacity that are like, if you come to this, do people have a voice in this, I guess is what I'm asking. Is that something that, I guess, is that important to your guys' decision making when you set these goals and make sure you're adhering to them?
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everyone, community input is not important. We want to hear what the community, what some sort of their visions are or what they think might, help the community. I will say, going back to the retail recruitment side of things, and even from my seat in the industrial recruitment, a lot of that is way more data and logistics driven. So again, while community input is welcomed, those companies are, it's not like the community, took a vote and said, do y'all want Chick-fil-A or Panera Bread? And then everyone chose Chick-fil-A, and then that's what they went with. It's like the data that those companies are getting, or again, on the industry side, it doesn't matter what we want as a community. It's based on where are you located, what's your utility capacity, do you have the site, do you have the workforce? So it's very much so data and resource driven, much more so than it is like us kind of getting a say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's not like Fort Dodge sat down and y'all voted at a town hall meeting or some sort and called up CJ Bio and like, move on out here, guys. Like, that's not exactly how it works. But
to your point about community input, like we would hope that, I consider myself to be, we want to make sure that we're being good stewards of the community. So even without maybe a very explicit community input session about recruiting industry, we know that we want industries that are going to obviously add value to the region, but also be good stewards of our natural resources and be good stewards of our labor force and our community initiatives and all of those things. And so, in my role, if I see an industry that wants to locate in Webster County that, is doing something that is maybe harming the environment or, creating some type of externality or that is harmful to the region, in my role, I'm going to say no. Like we're the stewards of this region. Like we're here to make sure we're adding value, yes, but doing it in a way that's going to be positive for the community.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like leave it better for the next people that come along as well. I mean, that's awesome. This is stuff I've never thought about. Your job is a lot more complex than I thought it was when I was writing down all these questions. So does the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance partner up with the schools in town? I know that, do you have anything to do with that? Do you go there and talk to kids about what you guys are doing, or do you have involvement with them at all? I mean, from Iowa Central to St. Ed's to Fort Dodge Senior High or the junior high, or et cetera? Absolutely.
Actually, one of my favorite parts of this role is the work that we're doing in the workforce development space. Because, again, economic development is multifaceted. I would venture to say it's like business recruitment expansion or retention, housing development, and then workforce development. And workforce is maybe one of my favorite roles because when you're thinking about building a labor pool or building your workforce, it starts with skill development. It starts with making sure the folks who are going to, graduate and come into your community have the skills that employers need in order to contribute and take on some of these really fulfilling roles. And so we work with, from the high school side, they actually they've been really exploring some cool like aptitude testing softwares that are going to kind of help showcase or highlight each student's proclivities to certain skill sets, and it'll actually help match them with not only just like generic career paths that they could take. But as industries sign in and become a part of this software, it'll actually show them the roles in Fort Dodge or Webster County that specifically match these skill sets. So, you can come out and actually see a job that exists right now that you would be, good at doing. And then all the way up to Iowa Central. So we had a workforce event the other day where Shelley Blanc, who's their economic development person, she wears like 900 hats, but she's incredible. And she's the chair of our workforce committee. But she was telling us about how they're now building, because of the demand and because of what feedback we were getting from industries and plant managers, they've now created essentially a work-based program where folks can get their degree while working in the manufacturing space. So you can go in and get your on-the-job experience, and then every so often go into the classroom and basically do like a skills test where you prove that you have the skills that you say you do. And so you can get that degree while being in the, and it's, what it's doing is it's kind of lowering those barriers, because there are students who leave high school and they just want to go to work, but they're skipping that step of going and getting that training that employers are looking for. So to incentivize students to go and get that training while also, earning and starting to build that living, it's these very, very active things that our school district is doing right now. It's all part of it.
That's awesome. That makes me think about like people that, like you said, left high school, went to a job, and are just as capable or have all of the aptitude of somebody that went to school for 4 years, because they've been doing this for 10, 15 years in an industry. And it's like, well, now you're giving them the opportunity to kind of go backwards and be like, well, yeah, I qualify. I check all the boxes on this piece of paper. Let's go get a degree,
Well, and not to mention, industry is evolving so much. So, the days of, kind of the more traditional like production role has changed so much. There's so much automation and technology and even artificial intelligence that's part of these production facilities. I was touring Silgan the other day, and they have an AI program that every single like lid and like lid tab on the top of a container that they make is sent through basically like a camera, and any like the smallest defect in these tops can be identified, because the system's learning what defects are possible and what like a quote unquote like a perfect top is, or they call it an end. And so literally AI's seeing the ones that, maybe didn't get cut just right, and it's kicking them off to the side so that they don't get sent out into the world. And so again, that like a program, just that one example, that's going to require a different skill set if you're the employee that's on that line working, because you're going to have to know how to troubleshoot or how to interact with that technology. And so as those roles evolve, the skills that our students and our workforce needs are also evolving. So having institutions like, the high schools and Iowa Central to help give students those skills it's invaluable.
So even though AI is here and people are like, AI is going to replace every job, AI helped with that job, but you still have to have somebody there to monitor AI. And not only that, when it kicks something off to the side, you have to have the competency of the person who had the job before you, before AI even was there, to be able to troubleshoot and figure out, why was this kicked off to the side? Is it fixable? Is it not? Can we put it back in the line? Can we send it back around through? So there still has to be somebody there, even though things are changing, and AI does help a lot, but you have to have somebody there behind it to help it.
We all, they always say you can use AI to write something or whatever, but AI is not perfect.
No.
Not in any way, but it does help. It doesn't mean that you can't use it. It's like any other tool. It's a tool. And you just have to learn how to use that tool effectively.
And that's a very specific example where that tool has like a very specific job. It's not kind of the more open-ended. When a lot of folks think of AI, they think of these like very open-ended,
like ChatGPT, is an easy one.
These kind of these generators of content that are just kind of like limitless, I guess. That when you have that tool that it's like, here is problem A and it's going to create solution B, and it's like a very linear. It creates a lot of efficiencies, I guess.
Absolutely. So what about local events for quality of life initiatives? Like, how does that factor into what your job is for your economic development strategy? We kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, is there anything that goes on locally here, or any events or things like that you're just kind of like, we have to make sure we don't interfere with this, or we have to kind of go along with this? I mean, it probably fits really well into the whole, like, do you get community input? I mean, just as the community functions as a community and as the people here live their lives, you can kind of probably see how your objectives would fit into this. But does that have any basis on your job?
As far as community objectives fitting, and I've only been in my role for about 1.5 years, so I can't take credit for this, but the city and the county are constantly doing, whether it's comprehensive planning, strategic planning, they're doing like very long-term goal setting as well as short-term goal setting. So there's never a, I guess I can't say never, but I think the Webster County and City of Fort Dodge folks do a really good job of being very proactive and kind of setting goals based on the community needs, not being reactive, but being very forward thinking. So, I was in a presentation with Chad Schaefer the other day, and they've got a public or like a capital improvements project schedule that goes out to like 2029. Whoa. Of like, here are the roads that we're going to fix in 2026, and here are the roads all the way out to here are the roads we're going to fix in 2029. Like, they're already thinking about those types of things. So everything in between, Webster County Conservation, all the trail projects that I think the Gowrie Trail is cutting their ribbon, I think.
It's real soon.
Yeah, I don't know when this is coming out, but depending on when it comes out, it might have already happened. But
yes.
So it's one of those things where all of those things have been planned out years in advance. And so I do think that they do a pretty good job of setting those expectations early.
All right, so we're getting kind of close to the end of this, and I think one of the best parts about this is as we kind of go through this list, your answers from previous answers are kind of encompassing some of these other answers. But what do you think are the greatest strengths of Fort Dodge when it comes to economic growth? Like, what are the things that make this area so great? Is it that proactive thinking? Because again, that's something that for some reason or another, I never would have thought that was so important. But as you've explained it in the last half hour, it's like, this is the thing that's making this all possible.
So yeah, because I have my clear number one answer, and then there's obviously some very technical answers to this question. The way that the city and the county and the Growth Alliance all come together at the same table to really approach and handle these projects together is absolutely unmatched. I was actually at a conference in Altoona a few weeks ago. I was sitting next to Chad Schaefer at the table, and Debbie Durham, director of IEDA, was doing the closing session. She was getting interviewed by one of the representatives, and he just said, what are some great things that communities are doing across the state to really set themselves apart? And the first thing that came out of her mouth was, if you don't know this, y'all should really look at the community of Fort Dodge and Webster County and the way that these folks work together when it comes to economic development projects. She said this in a room full of probably like 500 people.
Oh, wow.
And it's like,
she's known to do that frequently.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where collaboration is a part of everything we do. Going back to the top of the conversation, when an industry is about to come to town, if we've done our homework, obviously that's number one, but knowing all the players at the table before you get there, it can be, you never want to be in like crunch time with folks that you may not have built that relationship with, or that you may not have talked about. We have meetings every other week where we're just talking about project updates and making sure everyone's on the same page, because when that industry does say yes and they're ready to come here, we want to make sure we're ready. And then, of course, the strengths as far as economic development, again, our location, we call it the Iowa Crossroads of Global Innovation for a reason. 2 Class 1 rail lines literally intersect.
Competing airline or railroad.
Yeah, they intersect, basically at a 90-degree angle. Again, all of the utility capacity, all of those infrastructure things are kind of the technical strengths that put us in a lot of cases, put us in the top 5, top 3, even in the top 2 communities that industries are exploring at any given time. But yeah, I think a lot of that doesn't matter if your community isn't aligned and moving in the same direction. If you've got the city who wants to get a project across the finish line, but a county who's dragging their feet, or vice versa, that can crush potential growth. And so the fact that everyone's moving in the same direction is huge.
All right. So let's just kind of recap this. I think we talked about it a little bit before, but how can maybe local residents, business owners, students, everyone else, how can they get involved? How can they support economic growth? Is it by going to these eggs and issues? Is it by going to those types of things? Or is it by, just speaking up and asking? Like you said, sometimes you go to school, it's these aptitude tests will help you figure out where you would fit best, and if you're just there doing these things, it will help you help everybody, help the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance, help the workforce, help it all. But what are some of the best ways people can get involved?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to support economic development and economic growth is, obviously getting involved. I mean, we shouldn't have to say it, but, supporting local businesses, that's kind of a really low-hanging fruit. Ordering things on Amazon is so easy. But when you support a local business, it's literally dollars and cents going to a member of this community that then gets invested back into the community. There's study upon study that shows how much of a difference that makes. And so I obviously supporting local business, but then beyond that, it might sound trivial, but just being positive and in your messaging, in the way you are interacting with folks, even whether it's on a digital media or in person, just the way that you speak about the community. Again, it sounds maybe trivial, especially when we talk about recruiting industries that are, hiring a bunch of people and investing all this money. But I've been in meetings where Fort Dodge or Webster County or whatever is among the top 2 or 3 communities that are being considered by these large industries. And beyond the questions of, do you have enough water? Do you have enough electricity that we need? Do you have the acreage that we need? They're looking at, is this community going to welcome us? Is this a place that supports their own, businesses, or is this a place that is, maybe distant or, not as involved, because they want to locate their facilities and invest in communities that are going to invest in them back. And so, and they look at the online clicks, they look at those narratives that are being put out. And I think there's an intangible value there that, really can't be quantified, but all of that helps.
We bring that topic up frequently with businesses, and whether it's a client or not, is how they look online totally represents the community, and what they're saying and what they're doing and what their employees are doing, all of that across the board, because like you said, they're vetting us. The other businesses are vetting us based on digital information, data, that type of thing, and not the emotional end.
Well, and there are communities that when companies want to locate in these communities, they, if a community is constantly fighting progress or fighting growth or fighting new new types of things that, again, that's being noticed. And so,
or even if they're not prepared, tripping over their own feet, they're not aligned with their goals to go forward. And
absolutely.
All right. So I only have a couple other things to ask here. Are there any future initiatives that you're looking forward to, or any things that you guys are working on down there at the Growth Alliance? I've heard some rumblings about maybe some stuff that you've been working on, possibly with like bringing veterans to town. Is that something you can talk about, or is that still on the?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I actually heard this from. It wasn't even you guys at the Growth Alliance. It was somebody else talking about how great a job you guys were doing at the Growth Alliance to try to attract veterans to town. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, so very, very briefly. So back in about 2014, the Webster County became a home-based Iowa community. It's a statewide initiative to basically try to attract veterans back to Iowa and back to our Iowa communities as a workforce development tool. We know veterans, when it comes to technical skills, leadership skills, communication skills, and those soft skills like reliability and perseverance and time management, all of those things, veterans are some of the best contributors to the workforce that we have. And so the state of Iowa came up with the Home-Based Iowa program. Webster County and Fort Dodge actually both are part of that program. And unfortunately, it had kind of gone to the wayside. I guess it really didn't have kind of a champion. It was Growth Alliance, city, county, like it just kind of unfortunately had sort of stalled out. And so we have officially reinstated that program. We are now going out and trying to get folks to, it's a very simple process. Local employers can, watch a webinar, create a login on Iowa Works, which I think most companies already do if you're employing a certain amount of people. And yeah, we're trying to, again, this is kind of a very simple, very, to me, a very impactful way to go out and one, obviously as a workforce development tool, but to show that we're, pro-veteran. And what's really, really cool is it's actually very serendipitous too. Right as we were reinstating this program, Iowa Central came out with a program where they will help veterans get their CDL at almost no cost. I would have to be fact checked on that. I'm sure there's some cost, but so they're actually covering costs for veterans to come in and get their CDL training. And it's no secret, we're a pretty big hub for transportation and logistics here in Fort Dodge, and so it's like how serendipitous and cool. We're attracting veterans. There's this program that literally gives veterans a very tangible skill. And then, oh, by the way, there are several firms in the region that you could go and get a very great employment opportunity. It's just little things like that where we're trying to kind of connect the dots. That's
so awesome. That's something, again, I had kind of heard in passing. I believe Todd McCubbin, Talk Fort Dodge, was talking about it with one of his guests. And again, I don't know if this episode will come out before his, but go flip over to that podcast when you're done with this one and check that one out, because I know that he was kind of talking about that a little bit on his show. So we're down to the end here. We're going to wrap it up with a question I ask every single person. Is there a time in your life where marketing has impacted you and you possibly didn't know it? That could be at your job. That could be in real life. Anything.
Well, I wouldn't have known it. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, but no, it's, I mean, obviously I think in everything I do, the funny thing to me, it's always like food and beverage related. So like if I am traveling for work or for the kind of the side gig that I do, like if I'm in a different town and I'm looking for a place to eat and I look up like where are the places to eat in town, I won't know anything about any of them, but I'm going to pick the one that has the best presentation online or the best photos that people have posted. I like visiting local breweries across the Midwest. And so I'll, if a brewery has a cool logo or just the labels on the cans are cool, again, I won't know anything about what's actually in the can, but it'll catch my eye. And it's that kind of subliminal thing. I think the presentation it's hard not to equate the external presentation to, what you assume the product's going to be.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, that's a perfect way of saying it too. And I just gotta say, this was eye-opening. This was really great. I'm really glad you took time out of your day to do this, because you're obviously a busy person. So this has been really good. Is there anything you want to close off on this to kind of let everybody know on the way out the door?
I mean, first of all, anytime I could talk about this stuff for days, but no. As a closing remark, I just think that again, economic development is so multifaceted. I think we all play a part. When we talk about enhancing quality of life, it's truly a community development effort that touches everyone. And so yeah, I hope folks are excited about what's happening in the region. I hope folks take pride in this community, because every day I'm learning, I'm going on plant tours, or I'm, visiting with the schools. I'm learning things that are mind-blowing about these communities. And it's like this, I hope folks kind of take stock in that and are proud of the community, because there's a lot of really, really cool things happening here.
That's super cool. Jefferson, thanks once again. If you're looking for anything Growth Alliance related, I'm going to put the links down below. And I should also say, make sure you check out their podcast, the Alliance Connection. You're not the host. You haven't been on it yet, but I'm sure you'll be a guest before we know it. Yes. So check out their podcast as well. Comes out about every other week. So that's all I got for everybody this week. I got Spin Market stuff down below. Yes. I think Cheryl's got one thing for you.
Yes.
On the way out. So what do we got here?
We have Buster, the bulldog.
Oh my gosh.
And Buster is good luck. So we want you to rub his head.
Oh, absolutely.
There you go. Yes.
You don't have to tell me twice.
He's getting a very shiny head with all the good luck.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jefferson.
Yeah, thank you.
This podcast is produced by Spin Market and Digital. Located in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Spin Market's highly skilled team can help you increase your market by updating your website, improving SEO, designing advertisements, and producing podcasts that will grab the attention of your market. Contact Spin Market today for all your digital marketing needs at digitalagent@spinmarket.com or call us at 515-302-8026. And to learn more, visit our website at www.spinmarket.com. That's digitalagent@spinmarket.com or 515-302-8026. Or visit our website at www.spinmarket.com.